Today on Political Access, we're going to take a look at some more presidential shifts. This time it's going to be 1976 to 1980, and this is more or less going to compare how well Jimmy Carter did during his first run compared to his second. So here's the usual spreadsheet. We've got the states here in the first column, followed by the 1976 Democratic vote. That's Jimmy Carter. The 1976 Republican vote. That is Gerald Ford. Then we've got the 1980 Democratic vote. That's Jimmy Carter again, followed by the 1980 Republican vote, that is Ronald Reagan. The next column are the Democratic shifts between those two elections, followed by the Republican shifts, and the last column is the net change between the two parties between the two elections. And I also have my usual shading here. The darkest colors are going to be over 10-point shifts, and the lightest colors are going to be under 5-point shifts. And as you could already tell, there's not many blue shifts on here, because in 1980, Ronald Reagan defeated incumbent Democrat Jimmy Carter. 76 was a close election between Carter and Ford, but in 80, it was a big swing toward the right, so there's going to be a lot of shifts on here toward the Republicans. Another thing to consider is the third-party vote. In 1976, there wasn't really that much of it. 1980, John Anderson, he got around 6.5% of the vote, so that plays more of a role in some states than others. So you can look more into these individual elections if you'd like. But let's get started here in Alabama. In 1976, Jimmy Carter, he took home 55.7% of the popular vote. Gerald Ford, he got 42.6%. Jump ahead 4 years to 1980. Carter sank down to 47.5%. Ronald Reagan, he got 48.8%. That's a net loss of 8.2% for the Democrats, a net gain of 6.2% for the Republicans, and a total net shift of 14.4% away from the Democrats and toward the Republicans. So now we know how it works, and we could quickly go through the rest of these states. The next state is Alaska, and that had another shift toward the Republicans, but by a less dramatic 5.8%. Arizona had a big rightward shift of 15.8%. Arkansas had an even more dramatic rightward shift of a whopping 30.6%. California, that was Ronald Reagan's home state in 1980, and that went an even 15% toward the GOP. Colorado, 12.5% toward the GOP. Connecticut, a lesser 4.5% toward the GOP. Delaware had a modest 7.7% toward the Republicans. Florida had a huge shift of 22.3% in the same direction. Georgia as well by 18.9%. Hawaii, very little change there, only 0.6% toward the Republicans. And now we've got a bunch more shifts toward the Republicans. First, we have Idaho by 18.5%. Illinois at an even 6%. Indiana 10.7%. Iowa 11.7%. Kansas an even 17%. Kentucky 8.7%. Louisiana 11.1%. Maine 2.5%. Maryland 3.1%. Massachusetts 15.8%. Michigan, small shift there, 1.1% toward the Republicans. Minnesota had a 9% shift toward the right. Mississippi a lesser 3.2%. And here's more double-digit shifts away from the Democrats. Missouri 10.4%. Montana 17%. Nebraska 18.8%. Nevada a massive 31.2%. New Hampshire 18%. New Jersey 11.2%. New Mexico 15.7%. New York did not hit double digits. They went 7.2% toward the GOP. North Carolina back over double digits, 13.2%. North Dakota, they had the biggest shift out of all the states, and that lurched a hard 32% toward the Republicans. Ohio got redder by 10.8%. Oklahoma as well by 24.3%. Oregon by 9.4%. And Pennsylvania by 9.8%. The next state is Rhode Island, and that had very little change, under 1%. 0.8% toward the GOP. South Carolina, that went toward the Republicans as well by 14.7%. Major shift in South Dakota by 27.3%. Tennessee, 13.3%. Texas, 17%. Utah, that went 23.5% toward the Republicans. Vermont is the only state that actually went toward the Democrats. Again, a lot of that is due to the third-party vote, but it went 5.2% away from the Republicans and toward the Democrats. Virginia, back toward the Republicans by 11.4%. Washington by 8.5%. West Virginia by 11.7%. Wisconsin by 8.2%. And the last state is Wyoming. That also got redder by 15.1%. So those are all the states, and I also have Washington, D.C. on here. And this is one of the rare times where it actually went toward the Republicans, but only by 3.6%. So those are all the states and all the shifts. And as usual, if you want to help visualize these changes, we could take all this data and apply it to a map. And here it is with similar shading. The darkest colors are 10 or more point shifts, and all the way down to the very lightest colors of under 1 point, those are going to be the tilt margins, and that's just Rhode Island and Hawaii. So what are the takeaways from this? Well, it's clearly a very solidly red map. The only exception, of course, is Vermont. Vermont used to be a reliably Republican state, but it got a little bit bluer in 1980, and there's not really a whole lot else to say about these shifts. It was a close election in 76. Carter ended up being very unpopular. Reagan came in. He was likable and charismatic. He was governor of California, a very important state. Carter had a track record, and voters were ready to try a different direction. So Reagan came in, and he won 44 states, 489 electoral votes, almost 51% of the popular vote. Carter in 1980, he was only able to put together 49 electoral votes in 6 states plus D.C. He only got 41% of the popular vote. Again, the third-party vote, John Anderson, he pulled in around 6.5% nationally. So it was pretty much a landslide for Reagan in 1980. He did even better in 84, but 80 was a dramatic shift toward the right. That speaks to the strength of Reagan at the time, the weakness of Carter at the time, and a widespread national environment that basically swept the country. So other than that, I'm sure you could look into individual states, find more specific shifts, but on an overall level, this is a great map for the Republicans and a terrible map for the Democrats. But hopefully you enjoy seeing these shifts, and I'll leave it there for now, so let me know in the comments. What do you think about any of the shifts in any of these states? Let me know any of your thoughts down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.